Welcome to another The Mando Debrief. I never officially set on that name, but now we're like at the penultimate chapter episode review, if you like. I guess I'm sticking with it. And this time I am joined by Brandon from the podcast Talking Bay 94. Hello, Brandon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for joining me. I guess if anybody hasn't come across your work, obviously they're going to want to stick around for this video for a bit longer to check that they are actually into you and inspired enough to find out what you do. Although I can say you do wonderful stuff out there. But pitch it now. Tell us about Talking Bay 94 and where people can find it.
Yeah, Talking Bay 94 is an audio podcast, and it's just my one-on-one interviews with people in Star Wars. So obviously something you and your viewers are very familiar with. And so it ranges the gamut from people that worked at ILM, like Phil Tippett or Lauren Peterson or Dennis Murin, to people that played, in the costumes. And then upcoming we have like Kirk Thatcher from ILM or Paul Davids, who I don't know if you read the Glove of Darth Vader book series when you were younger. It's one of the worst Star Wars book series of all time. But he came on the show, and it is a treat. So anyway, yeah, Talking About 94, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts.
And we do have some crossovers in terms of guests, but you've more kind of gone in the direction of ILM and more, I guess, coming from a more behind-the-scenes angle, haven't you, in terms of crew members, in recent times at least?
Yeah, and I mean, you can go and look at our episodes, because really, it's nice. This is the first time we're able to meet face-to-face, which is awesome, because I feel like when I came in, you were the only one that was really doing anything like it. And so it's nice, like, us having our guests sometimes interlink and be the same, and having 3 connections on Skype, apparently, of people we've talked to in the past.
Yeah, we do have 3 mutual contacts on Skype, but we haven't worked out how to actually see who those mutual contacts are. So we've been speculating. We think a stormtrooper might be involved who might have bumped his head on a door. Who would be your dream guest for the podcast?
So there are 2 that are... I can feel it. 2021, I can feel it happening. Ben Burt, John Knoll, I could feel happening. That would be the best. And then I always say, if I ever get Marshall Lucas on the show, I will end the show. That will be the last episode of the show.
Really?
Why do anything else? Marshall Lucas. So that's kind of the trifecta that I have going right now. 2 are attainable. 1 I think would never ever try, but it's nice to think about sometimes.
Yeah, but you have to try. That's the thing with this game. You have to at least try, everybody, because people see the results, don't they? But they don't see the knockbacks. For every 100 emails you'll send, you're gonna get 90% knockbacks, aren't you? People only see the results. So when you're regularly delivering these names, I think some people anyway assume it's quite an easy thing, but it's not. However, you've always got to at least try, because anything is possible, of course. So
anything is possible.
It is. Right then, let's talk about the Mandalorian, Chapter 15, The Believer. So this episode, it started with what I think we expected it would be about, a jailbreak, essentially. But it was like the easiest jailbreak ever, wasn't it? This was just the opening scene, essentially.
It made me excited for what was to come, right? Because that's what we thought. The whole episode was going to be them breaking Bill Burr, Mayfield out of jail. And then the title comes across, right? Oh, we have a whole episode ahead of us. And we can talk about general thoughts, I guess, but this was a filler episode of, people love throwing that term around, but I thought the action and the kineticness of it and Rick Famuyiwa's direction, I think, really kind of told a story that we're kind of learning more and more about Mando's psyche that I think is very important going into this finale.
Yeah, it wasn't series changing, but I still think it was a meaningful episode. There was some good character building, and I don't think I at least expected anything more than a setup episode to this big finale, and that's essentially what we got. I do like a kind of quicker review on a Friday, just a 2-3 minute, not a reaction, but just my initial thoughts. And looking at the comments from subscribers, there was a lot of comments about Boba's spruced up paint job. How did you feel about that?
I tweeted it, and I think people thought I was talking about Pedro's face, but I tweeted, "Oh, look how clean he is, my little baby boy." Was my reaction that I said out loud when I watched it that morning. He looks great. I mean, it looks really good. I'm glad he has a can of spray paint in the Slave One, right? I'm glad he was able to take care of that. I was surprised with how much Jon Favreau really loves like the old Kenner stuff. I'm surprised, and I even have the Hot Toys behind me of the original Kenner paint job,
Yeah.
right? I am surprised that he didn't just like do that, you know? Like I'm surprised we didn't get this. Like, can you imagine if it was like the exact like original action figure that was like slightly more muted colors? But I thought it was great. I thought it was really great.
It does look cool, but yeah, it doesn't. It didn't immediately sort of hit me as, oh, we're back. It's Boba back. You know, it
Right.
takes some, I guess, acclimatizing for the eyes. I had some mixed comments anyway about that. However, there was a whole lot of love for those seismic bombs that were dropped. A whole lot of love for that in the comments. Were you a fan to see those dropping?
Yes, and I mean, we just talked about Ben Burt, right? Like it was a little kiss from Ben Burt in the morning. I was like, this is great. What a nice little treat. That was we knew it would have to have happened eventually, right? Seeing the Slave One again, they would have to pull that out. But it was just so cool, like getting that this yesterday morning.
Yeah, I mean, generally dropping bombs we shouldn't get excited about. It's not good, but in a Star Wars world, it's okay. We're happy for it in Star Wars.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Staying with the Boba theme for a little while, maybe you can help me with this. Is this the most we've seen into Slave One? I'm thinking it must be.
I think so. And especially the cargo hold, right? We've never seen that mechanism, that circular mechanism, which I thought was super cool because we've seen the cockpit rotate and we were like, how is he not getting vertigo? Where is his stuff flying around every time? But seeing that kind of gyroscopic whatever was happening back there I was like, oh, that's great. Cool. We're learning even more about something that we've had toys of for 40 years.
Yeah, and it's bigger than I expected inside to fit them all in quite comfortably. It's like a I don't know my Doctor Who too well, but I know the TARDIS is obviously bigger inside. It's like a TARDIS is Slave One. Very nice. Very nice. Wasn't expecting to say that at any point in my life, to be honest. So, they break out Mayfeld, Bill Burr's character. I think it's the first time I've referred to him as Mayfeld. I've just been saying Bill Burr's character. I certainly did from a whole 3-minute review video yesterday. So they arrive on the planet to go into the to the base to get the coordinates, but of course, nothing's ever plain sailing with Mando, and they get ambushed by what they call pirates. But this is just one of those little things that's been bugging me a bit. I mean, they weren't really pirates, were they? They just seemed to. It wasn't like they were trying to steal something or take away the kind of buggy thing. They were just trying to blow it up. Really, were they just like disgruntled locals?
That's what I was, because again, you get to the end of the episode and you get to the end of Mayfeld's arc, and you see him kind of maybe returning to that city that they initially drove into that was kind of desecrated by the Empire and really kind of experiencing the effects of what a tyrannical government can do. And so that's what I thought as well. The only thing that got me, the only thing that I was like, maybe it's not just part of that city that we saw or that civilization that's kind of still been on that planet, is the fact that they were all the same species. And I'm like, then maybe it was like a semi-separate sect of it, kind of like the Clitonians in Sanctuary, right? I was like, okay, maybe it's something similar. But I had a feeling that it was all connected with kind of that social landscape, at least, that they were walking into.
And that's the thing with I'm not expecting this to ever come back because it's not a big question that's been that's been dropped on us and it will leave us hanging too much. But you never know with the Mandalorian, these little kind of seeming what seem to be plot holes often come back around. Even a season later. Right. But obviously, I'm not expecting that one. Will we find out whether they were pirates or not? Pirates by name or pirates by nature? I think just by name, on a whim by Mando, is probably the likelihood there. Something that another niggle, but didn't really niggle at me at the time. It was actually something that really didn't niggle me at the time. It was more when I put up my video, and it was highlighted in many comments, was the face recognition. Obviously, Din ends up going over to the console, and has to take his helmet off, which you can expect for a face recognition system. But unless he has some kind of Imperial background that we don't yet know about, it recognised his face. You would presume, wouldn't you, that you would have to have a face that's on the Imperial records to be recognised by this, Imperial console. Yet Din's face, does it just accept any old face? What are you thinking there?
It's either it's the worst face recognition software of all time.
Yeah, simple as that.
Or it is, because I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing that Moff Gideon used when he initially touched down in the first season and was kind of yelling at everyone. He knew who Cara Dune was. He knew what everyone was. And I believe he knew who Din Djarin was, right? I believe he said Din Djarin, Mandalorian, blah, blah, blah. And so there might be an aspect, maybe it was part of them rounding up the Mandalorians during the Empire Siege of Mandalore that we haven't really seen yet, or however Moff Gideon got the Darksaber. Maybe there was some sort of aspect of putting them into a system. But even then, if you were a prisoner, I don't know if that would let you get into an Imperial security database, but we'll find out.
Yeah, it just seems a little bit slack. Like you said, maybe it is simply just the worst face recognition system ever. Or maybe it's the Empire's equivalent of that online sort of thing to prove you're not a robot. You have to tick the boxes with traffic lights in or something like that.
Right. He's like, these are buses. We're good to go.
I'm human. Let me in. Let me into your system. They called it the Sergeant Messes area, didn't they? And I loved all that. This wasn't my favourite episode of this series at all, but I loved all of the moments in there, despite the weird face recognition thing. And I think really what stole the show was, Bill Burr was great in it, and he was not. I don't think he stole the show in this scene. I'll come on to who I think did, but Bill Burr's character, I wasn't particularly excited to see again. I didn't enjoy him. I didn't enjoy his episode, actually, in season 1 so much. But I thought he was great, actually, and it justified the return, in my eyes, at least. I really enjoyed the awkwardness of Din as well. He was so uncomfortable, helmet off, and obviously his surroundings. But Richard Brake, who played the Imperial officer, the sleazy, creepy, chilling Imperial officer, for me, he stole the show.
I love it. The original Night King, right, from Game of Thrones.
Exactly, yeah. And Joe Chill from Batman Begins.
Yes. And it really, that scene was the showstopper of the whole episode, right? It reminded me very much of Inglourious Bastards, the Michael Fassbender, them sitting in the bar with the 3 fingers, very, very reminiscent of that. Really heightened the tension of it all. And all 3 of them were acting just way above the belt for this show, and it was really, really great to see.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and something I couldn't believe it when I saw him at first, because it's when Mayfeld goes into the room and then sort of starts to backtrack when he realizes, oh, hang on, I know that dude. So obviously we're looking at Richard Brake's character from a distance. And I'm sort of thinking, it's a bell's starting to ring in my, in my head, which usually is a very delayed response. But on this occasion, it was, straight off the bat. Is that Richard Brake? And I was actually, I'm happy for him on a personal level, but I was gutted when we got the close up and I realised, oh man, it's Richard Brake, because I interviewed him about 2 months ago for this channel, and. Oh man, I'm just annoyed talking about it. It kept me up all night. But I interviewed him a couple of months ago, and as you know, he wouldn't have been able to talk about it anyway. Even if he told me off the record, it would be off the record, and we wouldn't be allowed to get it on on tape. But I just know, because I interviewed him about Game of Thrones, about Batman Begins, his career in general, his crazy accent. He's the most un-Welsh sounding Welshman you'll ever come across. And yeah, now I'm going to put this up. I'm Mando heavy at the moment, coverage wise, content wise. So after Mando, I'm going to start putting out all of this other content I've built up. I'm going to put this out, and my comments are going to be filled with, why didn't you ask him about the Mandalorian? Why didn't you ask him? I know. You can't win in this game, but he was great.
But you can put it in your descriptions and in your title, and really, get people to watch it anyway and get them excited, and then just invite them back. I don't know, just be like, hey, we know that you did this now. You're dead. Come on in. That was kind of like me with Michael Bean, right? Like I was like, okay, Michael Bean, great. I would talk to you about 100 other things, even if you weren't in Star Wars. But now you're in Star Wars, so you can come on, and you got shot. So you there's no like reason to be coy anymore. Like you can just talk about everything, and then you're done. So anyway,
No, man, Brake's blown it with me because I actually had this picture up behind me, and he did. Now, when I think back to it, I think I think he trolled me a bit because he brought up Star Wars, and
oh,
he went, "Oh, I guess you want to talk about spaceships and stuff." Seeing the picture behind me, and
that's great.
I knew he wasn't really into Star Wars, so I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm happy to, but that's not what we're here for, you know." So I'm like, man. So he's not welcome back. No, I would definitely have him back if he's up for it. I'm putting that on the record now. Yeah, and obviously moving along in terms of the chapter's narrative. So the mission was a success, which, of course, we could only expect. And I think, personally, what stays with me from this episode after Richard Brake's performance and the crushing disappointment when I realised, oh man, my comments, is probably the final moments. Mando throwing Moff G's words right back at him. That's such a setup for next week, isn't it?
It's so cool. It was like a Liam Neeson Taken. He was like, I'm ready to go, and I mean, it was badass. I guess my only thing, and that was the comment I kept seeing, was like, well, now Moff Gideon knows he's coming, quote unquote. And I didn't really think of it that way. I thought it was like Moff Gideon always knew he was coming, right? There's no way that he wouldn't be aware of that. I guess the only thing now is like he knows, I guess, the location, and Moff Gideon knows that he knows the location. So, but what a great way to like just like get us hyped going into next Friday and seeing what's going to happen.
Yeah, and do you think Moff is, because I think it's Giancarlo Esposito. Really, his all his bad guys are just so sort of chilled and silently menacing. So you can't
Right.
really read them too much. Do you think he's worried? For me, he looked a little worried.
Right. I think he was taken aback. I think it's exactly like him being able to track that location made him worried, right? And so we'll see. Again, I was hoping that there would be a reveal of what the location is because I have my theories of where this is going to end up, right?
Where, Brandon?
Okay, I have two. Here's my first one is Camino. We're going to Camino, right? We have the little clone patches on the Doctor Pershing and the guys that got blown up in the last time we went. So I'm like, okay, we could go to Camino and like kind of set all that up, or we could just be going straight to the unknown regions where I guess his boss is now, where Thrawn is, and that could be really cool to see the unknown regions in live action Star Wars. So we'll see.
Do you think Thrawn has a role to play in this series, or was that more of a setup for the Ahsoka series?
So this is I'm going back and forth on it because there's part of me, especially after this investor call, right, where they announced the Ranger of the New Republic show and they announced the Ahsoka series, and then Kathleen Kennedy mentioned that those three series plus with the Mandalorian combined would end up connecting again into like a broader story, right? And so if Thrawn is Gideon's boss, right, and if all these things are being set up, in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're doing a soft reboot of the Thrawn trilogy, of the original Heir to the Empire stuff, right? It's the same time period as the original Thrawn trilogy. They're setting it up in a way where it would all make sense and then lead into the creation of the First Order. I don't know if we see Thrawn at the end of this episode as like the Darksaber moment. Like we don't see a blue hand. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what we see. But we would, I think, eventually see him, whether it's in Mandalorian or a Mandalorian interacting with him in an Ahsoka series or something like that. That's just me. I have no idea.
No, I hear you in much of that. It seems I don't have an opinion on this yet because it just seems so odd, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. But Star Wars is going Marvel-esque, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, even everything that they were talking about all seems to be relatively connected, right? Like Hayden Christensen coming back for Obi-Wan means Hayden Christensen also probably coming back as good guy Anakin Force Ghost for Ahsoka. You know what I mean? So they're laying all these pieces down, and it's probably not going to be as hyper connected as the MCU is, and as like Kevin Feige's presentation was, where he's like, and Monica Rambeau, who you saw here, will be here, and I'm like, okay, like that's enough, it's okay. But I do think that they have taken a page from Marvel, for better or for worse, and slowly will start integrating things, even like what we saw with Operation Cinder in this episode, bringing that up and kind of, again, slowly tying in things that we were playing in the video games or reading in the Aftermath books that we really weren't thinking anymore were canon, are now being like, no, no, like it fits. Like here, let's bring that up. So now it's like anyone's game, and they're doing, this is what, the seventh Thrawn book at this point, like that they're churning out in the new Disney canon. So obviously they have a big part for him to play in live action somewhere, and I can't imagine they don't at least somewhat introduce him in their biggest show.
Yeah, well, bigger picture, we're not going to be short of things to talk about for years, perhaps lifetimes
Right.
to come. But bringing it back finally with chapter 15, what would be your, we've discussed some of the moments from the episode. What would be your top takeaway, your headline moment?
My top moment is more, again, I love when Star Wars can take a step back and just have fun, right? And it's nice getting little like teasers of bigger stories or whatever it is. But Rick Famuyiwa, especially his direction, was pulling cinematic references, which is what we love in Star Wars. And it's been a lot of Kurosawa. It's been a lot of things that inspired George. But now we're getting things that George inspired. And this whole episode felt to me like an Indiana Jones, like Last Crusade prologue, just train sequence. You know what I mean? And so those kind of things really get me excited to see that play out in Star Wars now, and seeing that kind of happen over and over again. And so that's really what got me excited. And then, because this, again, is a, kind of a breather before this next episode, whatever happens, and whatever is going to happen to Baby Yoda. And so it was more just like taking a step back and enjoying what we've come to in a Star Wars live action series. And that's kind of my like, okay, let's take a step back and like appreciate, like we're getting pretty good Star Wars every week for the rest of our lives, apparently.
Yeah, no, it's pretty special. And I think for me, something that I didn't mention earlier that was important personally, I feel that we built up to this with little moments this season, but this episode was the episode where, outright in the open, in the public domain, the quest became the son, the child, if you like, with that final kind of attack on verbal attack on or threat to Gideon. Because I feel like, I think it was last chapter 14. Before, that's when they went to the Seeing Stone, wasn't it? So when they were on their way in the opening scene, Din was sort of trying to convince himself that he's doing the right thing. It's all about the quest. We've got to get you to your own people, get you trained, you're too powerful, etc. Like it just seems for me slowly as the season's gone on, he seems to be coming to the acceptance that, no, you're my kid and you're part of my life now. You're not just a quest.
Yeah, and being able to vocalize that, I think, is a very obvious way to show Din's journey as a person, right? It's even in this last episode where he's like, he is important to me more than you ever know, right? He's mimicking Gideon's words, but in a way that really, for the first time, him saying it out loud, of saying like, no, I really do care about this child, I think is very powerful. And you mix that with something that's been a concurrent theme throughout this season of him. The first season was him gaining the armor and being worthy of Beskar. And then I feel like this season is him being able to shed some of that and like take his humanity back a little bit. And I think that's going to culminate in him just running around without a helmet on in season 3 and being like, no, this is who I am. I'm not the Mandalorian. I'm Din Djarin. So we'll see.
Marks out of 10.
For this episode, I'd just give it a solid 7 out of 10. Great time. No major complaints. No major, like, oh, how dare you? And yeah, 7 out of 10. Rick Famuyiwa's direction, though, like completely like frenetic and incredible, and I'm very excited. I think he was attached to that Children of Blood and Bone show, I believe, the movie that they announced, and then they didn't really bring it up on this call. But I'm excited to see whatever he's able to do past the Star Wars universe. So I've been very impressed with every episode he's done.
Yeah, man. Well, 7 seems fair to me. Brandon, thank you for joining me. And just remind people where they can find you and Talking Bay 94.
Yeah, Talking Made 94, anywhere, Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, tune in. And if you hated my voice in this episode, I edit myself out profusely. Like you hear me maybe for 2 minutes of an episode. So that's a pretty good like trade-off. You know,
Well,
if you really didn't like this.
I mean, if they've made it 20 odd minutes through, I imagine they're all right with your voice. I imagine by now.
We'll see. Or it could just be the personality of Jamie is what they're really here for, and then they just kind of mute every time they see my mouth moving. So I think it's one or the other. We'll see what happens.
That's true. That's true. Well, I'll link to all of that in the description. So thank you again, Brandon, and thank you if you are still here. Thank you for not muting both of us or one of us, and thank you to all Patreon members as well. And I will be back next week with the final one of whatever this is, and also the quick review on the day of the release as well. So thank you, world.